I was a very young man when I met Mel Fisher, not long after he had found the Atocha. We sat in his office that was covered in sand. I asked him if he had found all the treasure in the ocean. He laughed, picked up a handful of sand, and poured it on his desk. He separated a few grains, pointed to it, and said, "Son, that is what I found." Then he pointed to the rest of the sand in his office and said, "That is what's still out there." I then asked him what he would look for next. Without any hesitation, he said, "The Nuestra Señora de la Maravilla." There are over 3 million shipwrecks on the ocean floor, just waiting to be found. Nothing is truly ever lost at sea, only hidden by time and sand. When I put this fleet together, it wasn't just for fun. And although we do have fun, we never lose sight of our goal. Right here, right now, we are on a mission.
Hi, my name is Jim Sinclair, and I am the Chief Archaeologist for Allen Exploration. Try to add a little archaeology, myself and Michael Pateman. We do the best we can to keep everybody moving in a good orderly direction and collecting as much archaeological information as we can. You never forget your first shipwreck, so to speak. But I was lucky enough to work on another great Spanish shipwreck, the one down in 1622, and that was the Atocha and her sister ship, the Santa Margarita, so there were 2 of them. And I got to experience, pretty early on in my career what these beautiful treasures that we're able to recover from the sea look like. And I also learned in that situation, in that position that I was in there, how to conserve this material and, for future generations. So that was back in 1981 when I started with Mel, and then as things progressed, I actually went on tour for, about 5 years, and after that I got a nice break, and I was asked by RMS Titanic Incorporated to become the first archaeologist to visit the Titanic, and for that we were using the Mir submersibles, which are Cold War era Russian submersibles, boy, it was an experience I just could not say no to. And I got to dive on the Titanic, I got to handle the artifacts and, bring my skill set to that particular project, which was an enormous amount of fun and, challenging at the same time. And then the next year, I got to dive on a site that was a mile deeper than the Titanic. So I was diving in 16,300 feet of water, same submersibles, the Mirs, and we found a wreck that went down in 1810. Of course, everybody was hoping it was going to be a Spanish galleon, but it wasn't. It's actually full of coconuts. I've been in this business for over 42 years, and today was the first time I ever found one of these on the bottom of the ocean. And lucky enough, it's a pretty nice one. I hate to say this, I think part of it's just right place, right time. The way that we're digging, of course, we're expanding each excavation, trying to cover an area thoroughly. And so you end up with these large berms on either side of the hole. And I was just running my detector and finding little bits and pieces because we're in an area that we're calling sort of the main pile area of this site. There was ballast and pottery and all that kind of stuff. And I saw this berm going up, and as I headed to it just to check it with my metal detector, I looked down and there it was. During the MAG survey of this area on the Maravilla, we located a significant hit, or an anomaly, if you will, during the survey. Initial diver identified it as an anchor, so what we want to do is gather up as much information as we can on this anchor, and that requires us to take certain measurements to see if this, number one, is a Spanish anchor, and number two, is it a large enough anchor to be, associated with the Maravilla. And so we're just going to grab some quick measurements down there, and we'll add them to our database that we keep. And in the future, people can look at it and say, okay, well, they found this anchor and they found this cannon, or they found whatever it is that we end up finding out here. We'll have the spots that we found it and the details on each of them. These guys are the future of this resource, and it really is cool because down the line here, there are literally thousands of shipwrecks in the waters of the Bahamas. And they represent a significant part of not only the cultural heritage of the Bahamian people, but of the world. And getting as much information on that as we possibly can is going to be really the job of the local Bahamians after, myself and, the older generation pass away. So the more that we can pass on how to collect the data that's necessary to identify these things, and then later to preserve them, because we'll go to the laboratory later and we're going to stick you in there and show you how to get your hands dirty, preserving all of these materials. We've already made some great finds out here, and there's so much more here yet to see just on this site alone. So we're on a trail. This is part of that trail, and it's our job to get as much information on each of these finds as we possibly can as we move along.
Man, it's one of the best experiences I've ever had in my life, honestly. Started without Jim, and then I met Jim earlier on in my career, and it's just so great actually identifying each artifact that we pick up before it gets home to the lab. So you know immediately. That's just what I appreciate Jim for the most. He's been teaching us a whole lot, and like he said, we're on a trail. Myself and Ronaldo are very stoked, very excited just to keep going. There's more stuff too.
Okay, let's gear up and we're gonna get in there.
All right.
Captain Bonnie Schubert was in an area that was just under exploration, she was looking at what they call magnetometer targets. And one of those targets turned out to be the metal hardware from a cannon carriage from the Maravilla. Right next to it were a couple of coins that were obviously from the Maravilla. So while most of the bronze cannons were already salvaged from the Maravilla throughout history, what we did have was the carriage pieces that were left. And they're here, and we're going to preserve them, and it's exciting stuff. What we have is part of the iron hardware from a cannon carriage. If you look at it, you can see where the trunnion for the cannon fit right in there. As a matter of fact, I think we found just this cap that would have gone over the trunnion. So this thing would have rotated up, comes down, and then there's a pin that holds that in. Large pieces of wood were associated with this. And these things would go through the wood, and I think this probably was where part of the carriage where the wheels would have been, where it would have slid back. But that's a trunnion fitting in there, and what a great piece. expedition after expedition to try to recover as much as they could. Would last from 1656 all the way to 1679, when the last of the official Spanish salvage expeditions under a man named Martin de Melgar took place. And the interesting thing was that in the last expedition that Martin undertook, the French they came in as interlopers, and they actually had a firefight with them. Martin was killed in that particular conflict, and they supposedly took near 200,000 pesos. Now, we have no idea if that's what they actually took or not, but that's what was reported. The first fellows that were doing this, Salmavilla and a guy named Irate, went into court, and they were held in prison, and until they paid a 10,000 peso fine, they were about to be executed. They managed to pay their fine, and they got out, and they went back to work. So it's an interesting time period for smugglers back then. We have a small gap of a number of hundred years that took place during the intervening centuries. And there was a fellow, a famous fellow back in that day, whose name was Robert Marks, and he wanted to go find the treasure of the Maravilla. And believe it or not, he did pretty good. In 1972, he located part of the structure of the Maravilla and recovered quite a few silver bars. Unfortunately, got into a little bit of a conflict with the Bahamian government at the time, and they asked him to leave, and they didn't renew his contract. And a number of years would go by until a fellow named Herbo Humphreys, who's a nice fellow with the cap here, he came in. He made some really, really nice recoveries, lots of gold bars, silver coins, and then there was a moratorium that came into effect in 1992, and it wouldn't be until the current expedition, under the guidance of Mr. Carl Allen, that we would actually be able to go back out there and start finding the remnants of this ship. And we believe there's an enormous amount of treasure and archaeological information, historical information, that has yet to come off of this ship. So we're very excited to be working here. And you can see in our museum here, the Bahamas Maritime Museum in Port Lucaya, all of the wonderful treasures that we've recovered so far. And we keep finding things, so we have to put them through the laboratory, through the curation process, and they get shown here in the museum.
Walker's Cay Maravilla Rum. Taste the treasure.
Right here, right now, we are on a mission.